Hello everybody, welcome back to Valley of the Mist Block of the Month. I'm Adriane Ritter.
And I'm Shelley McNeely.
And we are here with the August 2021 Block of the Month. So this was a block that Shelley worked on.
Right.
And what's it called?
Well, it looked like pinwheels. What it's called, I don't know.
Okay, so it's like pinwheels, spinners, whatever.
Right.
Okay, so first things first, please go get the instructions off the Valley of the Mist Quilt Guild's website. They should be either in the Block of the Month section or in the newsletters. That helps you so you don't have to keep referring back to everything. And we are trying to do, right now at this time of the year, a little bit simpler blocks, giving you kind of easy, we made you do the hard stuff first. No guarantee there aren't any hard ones left, but this block is pretty simple. So Shelley, tell us about fabric.
Okay, so like the rest of this year, we are not doing an exchange of blocks, so you get to pick your fabrics totally, but you need a focus fabric. And this is my focus fabric.
This is my focus fabric.
And then you need a fabric that coordinates with it. So I'm using this green.
And I have a green in that one, but I also am doing it with blue, as you can see from the other blocks this year behind me.
And then you need two neutrals. A light and a dark would probably work best.
So if you're not sure what neutral colors are, generally they're like whites, grays, creams, browns, something like that. That's something that doesn't make a statement.
Right. Okay. All right, so I guess we can talk about the block now. Okay,
so your fabrics are probably already picked out, so you're set with those. And we're going to talk a little bit, probably in the next segment, more about how to make this pinwheels look more pinwheely.
Right.
But keep in mind, how you arrange the blocks is kind of up to you, and they don't have to look like pinwheels.
Right.
It's just they will if you arrange them a certain way. Okay, so what do they need, Shelley?
Okay, so you need 4 strips, 1 strip of each color that's 21 inches long. And the width we will talk about in a second.
And I do want to jump in here and say the 21 inches is not generous. So don't skimp on that 21 inches.
Right.
You need 21 inches. I mean, you could do it with small pieces that are each 5 1/4, 4 of those, but
because ultimately we're going to cut this into 5 1/4 inch squares. So if your pieces add up to making 4 5 1/4 inch pieces, you can cut it so you have 5 1/4 inch pieces of each. Then you're fine. You can do that. Because actually I don't have it here, but on my white I'm going to use 2 different strips just to make it work, because that's what I have, so that's what I'm going to use.
Okay. And then how wide are the strips?
Okay, so you're going to sew 2 strips together, so you're going to end up sewing like this strip to this strip.
Whatever. That's an example. It can be any 2 strips.
Right, and this one to this one. Okay, so when you sew them together along the long side, they need to be at least 5 1/4 inches wide.
So if you measure the 2 before sewing, you need to add a 1/2 inch to that. So they need to be, the combined width needs to be 5 3/4. Now, I just made it simple, and I used strips that were almost 3 inches wide, because it's 2 7/8 if you put it in half, but they don't have to be the exact same width.
No, just close would make it work better.
It looks more pinwheely if they're close to the same width, but they don't have to be.
Right. And another suggestion is try to make it so that when you put the 2 together, they...
I know you're worried about this, Shelley, she wants them to have a contrast. But I think all of our fabrics, no matter how you put them,
you're probably right,
have contrast.
Because we're totally guessing what you're using, but yeah.
I mean, I think I could match up any of mine, and they would contrast.
Yeah, I agree. Me too.
Yeah.
So
Okay, so what we want you to do for this first step is obviously cut out your fabric, and then you're going to just take and pair them up, two of the strips, and just sew a long seam down these strips. If you've oversized the pieces, then you don't have to worry about your seam allowance. But if you're really close to that, 5 3/4 inches between the two of them, then be careful with your 1/4 inch seam allowance, and, or maybe even go a scant 1/4 inch.
Scant. If you do scant, then you should be fine.
So we're gonna, you want to talk about the next step? I think we can.
You think so?
Yeah. Okay. So you're gonna take, say, these two pieces and sew them together, and you're gonna end up with, a strip that looks like this.
And press it either direction.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. And then after you have them pressed, take a ruler and you're gonna cut each of these strip sets into 5 1/4 inch pieces. So you're gonna cut, this way, so you end up with 4 5 1/4 inch pieces. And while you're doing it, check, they should roughly be 5 1/4 inch square.
Right. They should be at least, right?
Yeah.
And probably not way bigger or anything. So.
Right, yeah. Get them right around 5 1/4 inch square. And so then when we come back, we'll have 8 of those 5 1/4 inch squares, 4 from each pair of strips. Okay, so we'll be back in a moment. Okay, so we have our 8 5 1/4 inch squares made of 2 pieces of fabric each. And what do they have to do, Shelley?
Okay, next we need to take each one and cut it on the diagonal. We need to orient them. Let me kind of change this a little bit.
All right, I'm gonna step in here a second while she's orienting, but while she's doing that. But I mean, in your mind, we don't want you to cut them all at the same time because there's a lump in the middle and it makes it weird. But you need to stack them so they're all in the same direction.
Right.
And plan on cutting them the same way.
Right.
Okay, so don't cut 2 this way and 2 this way. Cut them all in the same direction.
Right. Like here, you cut from here to here, always the same.
And it really doesn't matter which way you cut them, as long as you cut them all the same.
Each of the 4 that are the same.
That's a lump under here. Okay, yeah, so don't watch me cut, because I've got a lump or something going on here. This is not being nice.
Huh.
Well, there's a...
I'm not liking you, huh?
No, that cord thing is under there.
Oh.
We hide it with these mats, but there's a lump because there's a cord thing. So I'm going to cut each of my blue and gray pieces.
No,
you're fine. So that they're like this same orientation. And I'll do the same with those. Then, after you do that, let me cut a few, okay? Shelley, think of something to talk about.
Okay, what we're going to do now is after you cut those into those pieces, then you get to arrange them how you want to make a block. You're going to make 4 of these.
So yeah, mess with mine.
You're going to end up with 4 squares again when you're done.
I'll give you a selection.
Okay, this where you was the diagonal is now going to be your outer edge. I have no idea.
Now I know we normally said we were trying to have that be, these bias edges not be on the outside. Unfortunately for this block, we have to.
I'm probably picking these up wrong because I'm just picking them up.
So
that one's good, I think, but yeah. Oh,
you need more of the same.
Yeah. So,
but okay, so what she's not showing you is that you actually, I mean, you can arrange them how you want, but there's one method where you take and you put 2 of the same and 2 of the same.
Right.
If I had 2 of the same. Or the other way is to take, the way on my block, can you put my block in front there, Shelley? I took each stack of the piece that was exactly the same, and I used all 4 of those to make one block. So if you do it like we're talking about 2 and 2 that are the same, see what I mean? How how this piece looks just like that piece, whereas this piece is the other color, okay?
Right.
So you'll get a pinwheel look with this when they're 2 and 2 or 4 are the same. If you mix them up, you really won't get
Right.
that much of a pinwheel, but you might like the way it looks.
Right.
So you can play with it and try different things.
Right.
So like we said, on this one I did 4, 4, 4, 4, all the same.
Right.
So what we need to do is you need to lay them out, find the arrangement that you like, and then you're going to sew together these sets of 4 that make the individual pinwheel. And to
Right.
do that, you're going to take 2 like this that are together, and you're going to fold one on top of the other. And starting from the center, which is a 90-degree corner, you're going to sew that seam, because if you try to sew from these real pointy edges, a lot of times they kind of get stuck under your needle.
Yeah, your machine doesn't like it sometimes.
Yeah, so sew those. Same thing, don't take a big seam. You don't have a lot of extra fabric. Try to do a 1/4 inch or a scant 1/4 inch. So these 2, then sew those 2, and then go to the next block. When you press them, you want to press all of the blocks the same direction, all of these 2 patches the same, so that when you lay them back out and they're sewn together and they're pressed the same way, and you flip it over to sew this center seam, then the seams will nest, okay? So you're going to sew the 2, and then you have 2 of them sewn, flip them over, sew that center seam.
Right. If you always press, how do I want to say it? Press to this long piece. Isn't that right? Does that sound right?
I don't
press
know. You
to-
didn't tell me that.
I know, but that's because that's the easy way. And then you're always pressing that direction.
Okay, and the nice thing about pressing to that long seam is that this doesn't have if you're pressing to this seam, then you're trying to press over already a fold.
Right.
So it's better to go the other way. Shelley didn't tell me that
I know.
in the earlier instructions.
I didn't get pressing instructions done.
Okay, so we're gonna sew together our 4 patches to make your sub blocks that may or may not look like pinwheels.
Right.
And then we'll be back. Okay, so we have our 4 sub blocks.
Right.
And when I made my sample one of my blocks was slightly undersized because I wasn't being super careful with my seams. So, but I adjusted for that and I fixed it. So we're going to talk about that right now. So first thing you should do is each of these little blocks, take a 6.5 inch square up ruler, set it on it, and see if you have edges around it. If you do, you're fine. If you don't, there's a couple options. So the first option, Shelley,
Take out your last
center
center
seam.
and make the seam a little smaller.
Right, because if you take out that seam, it gets big both directions.
Right.
So you can gain, if you make that like an 1/8 inch seam instead of a 1/4 inch seam, you're going to gain a 1/4 inch around. So it makes it a lot bigger.
And hopefully you aren't off by more than that.
Right. The other option is if you have some that are bigger and some that are smaller, it kind of messes with your arrangement, but pair a big one and a small one next to each other, and maybe between the 2 you have the 12.5 inch.
Right.
And the other option, if you don't want to take out that center seam, is just plan on sewing these last seams as 1/8 inch seams.
Right.
Okay. So
Because we want to end up with 12.5 inches when we're done.
you want a 12.5 inch square. Okay, so on my layout here, so Shelley did like I did on my sample block, and she paired up the 4 of each of the same.
Right.
So she has 4 definite pinwheels. So I mixed mine like half and half. But if you see the way when I laid this up on the board, it was kind of interesting. These blocks kind of, I turned this one. I had them like this, and see the blocks kind of complete each other and kind of run into each other. And I'm not sure if that's good or bad. You know, it's up to the individual person. But if I laid it out like that and I thought, ooh, that looks kind of boring, all I'd have to do is turn each of these diagonal blocks a quarter turn, and then I get a completely different look. And you kind of get this little pinwheel look in the middle, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
So on this one, we're going to take and you're going to sew together, you know, flip over, sew this seam, flip over, sew this seam, press them.
However,
so that the seams are opposite when you one way, one the other, and then you're gonna, when the two are sewn together, you're gonna flip it down and sew this final seam right here across it, press that out, and then check to see if it's a 12.5 inch square, and it should be. Then the final thing, well, we'll come back. We'll talk about it when we come back.
Yes.
All right, so let's sew these last seams, and we'll be right back. Okay, we're back with our finished blocks. Mine was a little oversized, so I took advantage of that, and I took when I put the ruler on it, I kind of turned it so that I got some wonkiness to it. Didn't want it to be too regular.
Well, mine was oversized to at least 1/8 of an inch all around. But I didn't do it wonky.
Okay. So the one thing I do want to mention, if you don't like that wonky look, which is certainly a personal thing, you know, whether you do or not, and you want to make sure that you get more points, which is really never our goal this year, but some people like that, then I would recommend, and a step before you do this, that you at least trim these inner edges before you sew them. Else, these, because my blocks were all like 1/8 of an inch big. So when I sewed them, the whole block got bigger, which kind of pushed these points out at the side. So when they go and sew to the attaching block, I'm definitely going to lose points here. This one I maybe have saved, you know, but that's all because I didn't trim that inner edge and bring it in. I mean, it's actually designed to make that inner edge the right size. But with our improv quilting this year, this block really was not super improvisational. So we took advantage of just being kind of lazy on those trimming up.
And we tried to use a little bit extra fabric because some of the things you'd have to cut would be weird sizes, and
we try not to make you cut on 8ths or you know, 7/8 of an inch or something like that. So anyway, so enjoy this block, and we'll see you here next one.